I walked through fire, I
Okay.
came out the other side.
We are now live. You just are listening to a song that our guest Kiele shared with me. We can do hard things.
I got what's mine.
So if you're just arriving, just take a moment to ground into this space and get present with us.
That I'm mine. And because I'm mine,
All right.
I walk the line.
So, I am so excited to be here, to be sharing this space with you, to be having.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here.
I'm so excited, Kiele, to introduce you to all of our listeners that are joining us. And before I introduce and tee it over to Kiele to introduce herself, I'm going to turn this music off. For those of you who are just joining me for the first time, getting to know who I am, I'm Lauren Beluchian, and I am a confidence coach for women. And there's really only two things that you need to remember and know about me. Number one, I'm all about deep connection. And it's one of the reasons we do coffee breaks and bring amazing women to join me, because I believe, it's so easy to get stuck talking about all the surface level stuff, what we do for work, how many kids we have, whatever that stuff is in the day-to-day. But when we really deeply connect, there's nothing more energizing than understanding why someone does what they do. The second thing is I'm all about authenticity. And this is in line with connection, but it's really getting to the light of who you are. And I believe everybody has a light. Everybody has this beautiful light inside them and a purpose. And through conditioning and through life experiences, we get layered on with self-doubt, people-pleasing, the perfectionism, imposter syndrome, whatever it is. We have all these hang-ups that are weighing us down. And I believe that when we strip those back and we get really back to the core of who we are, living our true self, we do amazing things. And we become a magnet to attract others. And so it's why I lead women in my own sacred container called 7 by 7. It's all about bringing women who are ready for expansion, who are ready to put down. They're at a place where they're like, Lauren, enough. I am sick and tired of doubting myself. I am sick and tired of getting in my own way and self-sabotaging my success. And I can't seem to get out of my own way. And so it's why I bring women in and we explore all of this together, but in a way that is safe and empowering and really keeping you aligned. And Kiele, I'm sure you can relate, like when you are hitting those edges, when you're starting to follow your truth, it can be a scary, lonely process because we're doing the real work. We're facing fears that are sitting inside us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So having that container is, and having a coach and an advocate and a friend by your side can make all the difference, to be your mirror, your friend, your champion, so that you can do the real work on this limited, precious time that we have here.
Very well said.
So these coffee breaks are all about giving you time and space to remind yourself, you are enough. You are more than capable of doing the work. And when you have the tools and you have the practices and you have the support, really, truly, your dreams become a reality. I know that sounds so trite and whatever, but truly it happens. And I've seen it happen. And so I'm very excited to have Kiele here with me today. She is an attorney. She is a success mindset coach. We have the pleasure of being in our own mastermind community together. And it's one of those opportunities where we've realized women supporting women makes a big difference.
Huge difference.
We do not have to be the lone wolf figuring this all out on our own.
I don't
And
think we can.
we can't. We're not meant to. And if you're someone that is, and we're going to talk about this today, we're going to talk about setting boundaries, but also protecting your time and your energy. Because when you start to do that, you start to realize, what things you need to do your best and where you need some support.
So
More
important.
importantly. So I'm going to pop in just a link for anyone who's like, ooh, what Lauren's talking about right now really resonates with me. I want to know more. My program, which is 7x7, doesn't kick off till June, but I am meeting with women now to really see if you're a good fit. And if you're a good fit, then it's 10 spots. And I would love, 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 love to know more about why you do what you do and what is getting in your way. All right, so let's talk about boundaries. Let's talk about the heart and soul of what we're going to get into today. Kiele, if you can be just so kind to give a little bit of background, like of your why, so people can know why you do what you do.
Well, it came down to myself getting to a place in my life that was hard and painful, really difficult. Despite the fact that I was excelling as an attorney, I was getting fantastic results for my clients. My own life was just full of guilt, attorney mom guilt. I couldn't win whichever way I looked. I was either feeling guilty because I was working and not spending enough time with my kids, or I was with my kids. I felt guilty that I wasn't doing enough for my clients. Anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. That's what caused me ultimately to seek help with my business, is where I thought the issue was what I needed to be working on. And that was partly true. My business development led to personal development that ultimately led to mindset coaching as a client. I was always coming from the business perspective, but what I realized, and this was really around the early part of the pandemic, I had already started coaching clients within my law firm, select clients, but and that was accountability coaching for the things that they needed to do to help my team. But what I didn't really take stock of until a little bit later is what tremendous value I had acquired, I guess, and what I'd accomplished for myself personally because of the mindset work I've been doing, and that was actually the real deal. My life had changed so much. My experience had changed so much. I had peace of mind. I had what I call these golden periods where, when you actually do, as you were saying earlier, start facing your fears and moving through that and doing the things that you need to do and showing up and beginning, the journey of living your purpose. These golden periods started showing up. So when my local attorney mom group, in our Facebook group, people started posting, because of the pandemic, more stress, more anxiety, more of all these things. That's when I started taking stock and going, I know how to help them. And maybe I should.
Right.
And I think that's what I need to do next. And, it was a little more involved than that, but that's the basic journey.
Did you have a moment then, your own moment, where you realized, like, was it more these just golden moments that would get sprinkled out? Or did you have a moment, if you will, that was like, oh, I'm really on burnout? Like, was there ever like a breakdown or some like, ooh, this is it, I'm hitting at the bottom here, and I got to
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was because my late father-in-law, who had been a mentor of mine even before I became a lawyer, was instrumental in influencing me to become a lawyer. He developed advanced cancer. I mean, he was really, he was far gone by the time he was diagnosed, and it was cancer of the liver.
Oh.
He, I would say, literally drank himself to death. And it was a 3 or 4 month journey. And during that time, my then husband and I traveled quite a bit to visit, to actually go help him wind down his law practice and be with the family and so forth. And so it was a few things. One, that put me even further behind. I really could ill afford the time off, but we just felt like we couldn't not, right? And so that was one. And then two, looking at what his name was Terry, looking at what Terry had created in his life, with alcohol, with, and being overwhelmed in his law practice,
Mm.
the day-to-day thing. It was kind of like, I'm not religious, but for the grace of God go I, that expression was apt. So when he did die, and we returned to, and my husband was working with me by this point, returned to our desks full time, so to speak. And we're still grieving, but now we're looking at this big mess because we're even further behind than we were before, and I was, going, I don't know how to catch up. I need help with this.
Yeah.
This is beyond what I have the current skills to do.
Right.
A, and then B, I will not. I owe it to myself, my family. I will not go down that path. And I could already see that I was at the beginning of it,
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and alcohol was my go-to, wine for, I
Right.
mean, I wasn't having any serious problems, but,
It's a slippery slope, and I hear that all the time. Like, I don't think it's not really a problem. It's a glass, 2 glasses a day, and just to help me unwind. My brain's on overdrive. I need something to just.
yeah.
So let's talk about overwhelm for a moment, because a lot of the women that I talk with, it's a huge weight that they're carrying. But the challenge is they're drowning in it. So when you're
Mhm.
drowning, you're not thinking about, you're just trying to breathe. You're not thinking
Mhm.
about, oh gosh, okay, how do I actually get into a place of peace and, you know, just stability.
Mhm.
So with you, like what, and we were talking before you shared your story about like, okay, I'm just taking this on, piling this on. Like, what is some things, key indicators, right? Key indicators for that woman to say, maybe I need to hit a pause button here.
Well, certainly if you're actually feeling, anxiety, guilt, overwhelm, burnout, that's on the extreme side. Those are obvious indicators. You really need to make some changes. It doesn't get better on its own.
Yeah.
But even if you're not to that point yet, when things in your life are feeling heavy, when they're feeling hard, when you're feeling like you have to push everything uphill, yourself, your family, your job, whatever it is that's going on for you in your life, those are really good indicators that something needs to change. And mindset is probably the answer. Usually I think people, especially if you're coming from a pretty intellectual perspective, which I certainly was, and I think most attorney moms do, it's not your go-to. It's not what you're going to guess. I didn't even really know what mindset was before I
Oh yeah,
started
it just seems so like,
this journey.
yeah, out there, woo.
Yeah.
And I think that
Uh,
the challenge is like when you get to that place, or maybe once it goes a little bit farther, it's like now all of a sudden you think you need an exit strategy, right? So it feels like I need to change my career, I need to end my marriage, or I need like something more drastic because um, it just feels like this is not working. When in fact, I've seen now women realize those were just maybe some for some that was a
mhm.
catalyst bringing them towards some bigger growth opportunity. But for some, like you're saying, it's just mindset. It's
Yeah,
flipping the script and saying, hey, what's happening in here?
absolutely. Well, and you can change your experience with something without any external changes whatsoever, where you really actually are just using some of the basic mindset tools in order to change how you're reacting, inside. And that alone can actually improve your experience. And then once you're able to do that and let go of a lot of the negative self-talk and problematic thinking and belief patterns and limiting beliefs, especially, you're in a better place to actually evaluate what is and
Yeah.
determine whether or not you need to make changes, externally. Because maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe it's internal work that needs to be done. Maybe it's some combination. But so long as you're caught up in all of it,
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty hard to figure out, what's the best approach here, what needs to change.
So give us one simple tool. Give us one that like someone that's watching can implement immediately.
Um, let's see. I think the most powerful one seems to be the mildest, but it's not. And this is mindfulness. Okay, so the simple tool is stopping and noticing what's in your current experience
Okay.
right here, right now, not in your head,
Mm.
right? Because a lot of times we get caught up in, I call it past remembrances. We're thinking about and agonizing over, even sometimes positive things that happened in the past. These are just remembrances, things that, are in our heads from experiences that we may have just had, or they may be long past, or future terrors.
Yeah.
Looking out ahead at, anticipating conversations or things that might happen or whatever it is, right? And we spend a lot of time in one of these two places and not really paying attention to and present in our current experience and our current life, which is actually all that's real.
Yes.
It's all that's real. And if you can stop, and the simple tool is this: pay attention to all the things. Like, I'm looking around this space that I'm sitting in. You can't see it, but I'm sitting at a desk. I'm noticing a lamp that has, the color, the texture, the lighting, the plant that's on the desk, etc. So, things that you see, things that you smell,
Yep.
things
Get
that
it
you
to your
hear,
sense.
things that you feel. The chair that you're sitting
Right.
on. Are you hot? Are you cold? Etc. And just really tuning into the here and the now.
Yeah.
And it does a couple of things. One, it actually increases peace of mind immediately, right? Because usually what's causing the stress and anxiety are those things in the past remembrances or future terrors, right? And if you can bring yourself to the present and realize that's not real right now,
Yeah.
it's actually not real. I'm torturing
Not real.
myself with things that are in my head, right? So that's one. And then two, it's when you're present that you're actually able to connect with, and this is, kind of beyond the beginner thing stage,
Next
but
level is going to be red, yellow belt.
yeah, exactly, next level. But part of what you're doing is really checking in to your higher self. I know that's a little woo woo,
Yeah.
but where you're really connecting with what's real, what's true, and that puts you in a better position to make decisions about important things, to evaluate, if something really is going on that you need to pay attention to, that you need to make a decision about, etc. You're in a much better space to do that when you are present than when you're allowing yourself to stay wrapped up in past remembrances and future fears.
Yeah. So true. Um, so let's talk about like some of these, these energy or time leaks. Like we were talking about, I was sharing with Kiele, I am someone that like has this story in my head and it gets in my own way of, like I'm a team player. I love collaborating. And yet I struggle with delegating, with taking things off my to-do list. And I almost find that at first I thought it was just me. And now I talk more and more to women. It's like, oh, that's me too. Oh, yeah. And the funny part is it's a little bit of an ego thing because the belief is no one else does it as good as me.
Yeah, right.
I
Well,
need to write that email and I need to copy edit this and I need to go on and, whatever it is, it's control and it really it adds to the overwhelm, but it's scary,
mhm,
right? And then it's like when you first start doing this, there's that like, oh, I passed it on to someone, and of course they did it wrong.
right.
It's that's why everyone has. I need to do it all. But how do you ever grow and scale and expand if you're a party of one?
Right. Well, you can't. And in my opinion, you can't actually live your best life if you don't learn to delegate, to build a team, to, seek outside resources, whatever it is. I mean, there are a number of different ways to go about this. And there's a couple of important things, when it comes to that sense of like, nobody can do it as well as I can. Well, a few things. One, it might be true, right? You and I were talking about this before, where I would make such a fantastic admin or paralegal. And honestly, I really don't think any of my paralegals ever did do it, as fantastically well as I can do it. But the thing is, I'm an attorney, not an administrative assistant, not a legal assistant, not a paralegal, not a receptionist. And so it really isn't the best use of my time as an attorney to be doing those tasks that somebody else can do. And maybe they won't do it as well as I can, but that's okay. That actually is okay. And there are things that you can do and that you can learn to do in terms of delegating, supervising, building an accountability, and various things. This is business training that can, help you train people and so that they can do it well. Two, an important thing to understand is you may also be wrong, right? This
no,
yeah, right. And so that's something I had to get over because I ultimately built a team of attorneys. And for me, it was at first hard to understand or even imagine how I could have another attorney do what I did. But I did manage to get to a place where I recognized that, okay, I may be the best at doing all of the things that make up my world in my law firm. Or at that time, it was my law practice. It wasn't a law firm yet, right? But the thing is, when I take a piece of it, there's a decent chance that there's somebody out there that does that piece better. A great example for me was I had a fantastic dismissal rate, right? I got 97% of my cases dismissed, which was just unheard of. What that meant, though, is I spent a lot less time trying cases, right? Actually having jury trials. So there absolutely were attorneys out there who, now, if I did have a trial, when I did have trials, contested hearings, I went all out. I'm not saying I was not good at that, but I wasn't as experienced. I wasn't as seasoned because my superpower was getting dismissals.
Yeah.
So that meant when I finally was able to let go of that ego, and look at what's true, I realized actually I would benefit rather than hiring a junior attorney, a younger attorney who I have to really supervise and train. How about if I look at a more seasoned, serious trial attorney who has tried, some of the most serious cases and bring that person in and collaborate and work with them. So it wasn't actually true that I was better than anybody else at everything in my world.
It's so funny you say that. What that just brought up for me was in my 7x7 group, at one point we go through with the Enneagram assessment. And, for those of you who don't know, it's similar to like a DISC profile or anything that's kind of getting your personality types. And when I first started doing it, I was sharing this with the women. Before I actually decided I was going to implement it, I'm like, well, if I'm going to implement this, I need to become the expert and learn it. And then someone, thank goodness, on the side said, or you could tag team with someone who already knows that stuff and bring them in and they can speak to it and you don't have to be the expert.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Like, how often do you think we need to then become the expert before we can teach or coach or lead in something, when it's like, no, you can maybe bring in a team member. The other thing, Kelly, you mentioned that I loved was in our private conversation was this whole idea of firing yourself. Or like, so can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that was an aha for me. I was like, yeah, I got
absolutely. Yeah. So the admin work is a really good example of that. I realized pretty early on in my business development journey that I needed to fire myself from the role of paralegal, from the role of legal assistant, right? And so it doesn't matter if I could do this better myself. The fact of the matter is I have to let somebody else do it so that they can grow and they can develop and they can, do this for me, because it just wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't good for my clients, for my business, to continue doing these things myself when they benefited a lot more from me being able to spend more time on being an attorney. Mm-hmm. And so that was really it, that it was hard to do, but I had to remind myself, okay, this got screwed up. And, rather than that being evidence of why I should continue doing it myself, I had to remember, and this is just, a practice. You have to sort of train yourself to remember, it won't get better if I don't keep going back to the table and saying, all right, so that got screwed up. What can I change? What can I adjust? How can we change the process to get it right or get it better next time? And, it's just an iterative process that you have to keep coming back to. And that's the process of firing yourself. And your first hire, your first idea might not work. That doesn't mean that you're not on the right track.
Ladies, if you're listening right now and this is resonating, there is a great chance that you are handcuffing yourself, preventing yourself from moving forward, because you are carrying way too much, literally handcuffing yourself from your expansion.
Well, and your clients, customers, whatever it is that you call the people that you help, are not benefiting from you keeping yourself in those smaller roles.
Right.
They are going to benefit from you releasing yourself from that work so that you can really focus on the things that you do best.
Your genius, your golden space,
Yeah.
where you light up.
And they also don't benefit from you running yourself ragged.
Yeah.
If you're not creating a world, a work life in which you're able to get away from it, have time to yourself, time with your family, time for self-care, et cetera, so that you're walking into these conversations, meetings, the work that you do for the people that you help, fresh, energized, able to be creative and resourceful, then your business, your clients, your staff, they're suffering too. It's not just you and your family.
Well, I've had to check myself with this whole concept of firing myself. Like I've heard myself slipping back into, I'll just do that. It'll be quicker for me to just do it. And I'm like, no, you were already fired from that role. You're not allowed. Like I have to say it
to do it.
And then I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta, it's empowering, and it's a mirror when you make that conscious effort and decision that like, this is no longer this. I've set a boundary on myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. And if you're doing it yourself, you are screwing up.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Once you have
the shift, it's like, no, don't trick yourself, because brilliant women are brilliant at manipulating themselves and self-sabotaging.
Yes.
I always say, I'm like, if you've got the ability, like your mind, you might be getting in your own way because you're so good at knowing your own things. You're subconsciously lying to yourself, manipulating yourself, sabotaging yourself.
Yep. Yep. When it could be a really painful loop to be caught in. And it's scary, I think, to step out of that and go, well, yeah, but I don't know how am I going to, well, right. You don't need to know the how until you make the decision. You have to make the decision. This is in so many areas. The decision comes first. And that decision is, I am firing myself from this role. That means immediately I need to take the next step, which is whatever it is. And you know what it is. Stop, get still, be present, and think about, all right, what's the next thing that I can do?
I have a lot of women that are also like, the same concept carries over into their like personal life. For example, few women I know that are like also the Uber driver for their children. Like they're just carting them around. I'm like, you need to offload that. That's not a value add of your time at all. But how, like, oh, I don't trust someone else doing it. I know the system, or they don't want to lean on their ex or whatever it is. I'm like, think about it for a second. Like, think of it's costing you, but it's a control thing, right? It's like, oh no, only I really know how to do it. Only I can trust myself. And it's like, I said to this one woman, really? Because in about 10 years or less, those kids are going to be very much on their own, and the world is going to be doing what the world's going to do, and you're not going to have the control. So could you find someone that could help you get from A to B, kids shuffle?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I remember it. Like when I first hired my first nannies, I'm shocked. I used to write out every single thing, breakfast, what they're going to wear, what they're going to do. And I look back at these old things. I'm like, oh my gosh, let that person do their job. Get out of their business. Let's do what they do. And you focus on what you need to do.
Well, this is in so many areas. It can be domestic assistance. It can be hiring a lawyer. It can be, any kind of professional, do your best to hire the best person you can find to do it, right? Whether that's you're needing to hire a lawyer, whether or not you're hiring a household manager or someone to take care of your kids, and then let them do their job. Now, you may have to provide guidance. You may have to provide accountability. If they're doing something that you don't like, you may have to be a grown-up and have a hard conversation with them. But the point is that if you do bring them in and then don't let them do their job, that's I don't have words right now for that, but it's not the way you want to go about this. You really definitely want to set them up to be independent but accountable.
Yep.
Right.
And then the other piece I want to say is when you're looking for someone to outsource and help you with some of these time things is don't get caught up in the perfection. Like it's got to be this exact person. Like hire someone. You'll learn, oh, I really don't like that. Or they might
Yeah.
surprise you. And you can always let go. This is not the person that you're tethered to for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Bringing up perfectionism, I mean, that's something also important. I mean, there are times when making sure it's just so matter, but it's not most of the time that we do it. And, good is good enough. This is actually one of the first coaches that I worked with in the law practice management group that I joined. This is the first business coaching that I received. She was great. And that was one thing she was like kind of constantly saying to me, because I definitely had that tendency to want everything to be perfect. And you can spend far too much time on that where you're letting other things suffer because, so good is good enough. And in so many areas, that's true. It's like that 80-20 rule,
Yeah,
right?
say the rule.
Oh, can I remember the rule?
Well, it's along the lines of, I believe it's like, it's get it to be 80% done and let it go. And wherever you're at, that last 20%, like you'll get to 80% pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That 20% is where we spin, where we waste, where where I actually think when I do compare it to like men versus women in this sense, like when I've worked with male colleagues, they don't get stuck on that 20 as much. They're like,
right.
oftentimes,
Right.
just get it done. And then the motion is like, I've had to work on it myself, but I've trained people I work with to say, hey, when you're working on something, give it to me at 80, because that last little bit you're spending is usually not like I can catch it like that. And same for my work.
Yeah.
Like you QLA something, you'd be like, oh, make this tweak, this tweak, this tweak in 30 seconds time.
Yeah.
Might have taken
Yeah.
hours of
Well, I think it also applies in the sense that, look, if you hire someone or outsource something, and you start working with this person or this company or whatever it is that, and it might be a lawn service or it might be a paralegal. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're getting assistance with, if you're able to get them to a place where they do it 80% as well as you were doing it, then that's great. Move on to the next thing that's not working. Right. And I'm not saying that you never circle back and refine and improve and whatever, but most likely at 80%, that's good enough to move on to the next thing. Because there are probably other things that you could apply the 80% rule. And if you do the 80% rule to everything that's not working in your life, you are suddenly living a better life.
It's so true. It's so true. So let's talk about then one of these things, perfectionism can be an energy leak. Like, what are some of those energy leaks and how do you protect that? Because I believe energy is everything. And so
a really important one that I think people overlook a lot is tolerations. Okay. And so this is anything in your life that bugs you. And it may seem trivial, it may seem, I'm trying to think of a good example from my own life right now. One thing is I had a tendency to not put my laundry away, right? I would wash it and then it would stay in the baskets, washed, but not folded, not put away. And I remember it being
go ahead.
It was a light bulb moment at some point when I was working with a fantastic coach individually at that point. This was before the pandemic. And some of the stuff that he was working with me on that we were talking about suddenly resonated. And he was saying, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there were projects that he and I were talking about when he was telling me that, and he was saying that, and that suddenly I looked at my laundry and realized, oh my God, Chris is right. And my laundry right here is a good example of that, because I'm doing the same thing in my business with almost all of my projects. Like get it mostly done.
Yep.
And then before I'm, actually done, I move on to the next thing.
Yep.
And so what I did is I actually took time out of my business day. I worked from home at that time. I still do, and I always have loved to. But so I actually paused and said, you know what? I'm going to finish this right now. I'm going to put away all this laundry, and I'm making this my new habit that for the laundry, from now on, I'm not going to stop once it's washed. I'm going to go ahead and put it away, because it was a toleration, and it was also showing me an area where I was stopping. right? So that's the energy leak, the tolerations. And that might be you've been needing to paint your living room.
Something so simple, and it's so true. It's these open loops. And there's
Yeah.
how many open loops do you have? I think of mine when you said that. It's for me, my trash, my bathroom trash. The trash is too small. It's always overflowing. And it's a small jab, but it's a jab every time I see it.
Exactly. And that sucks a little piece of energy away from you.
Right.
And there's going to be a million of them.
I have a client that just said to me the other day, her ex has moved out and he still has his shoes in like the walkway.
Oh
and
no.
For a year.
That's huge.
But
Yeah.
she really downplayed it. It came out kind of like similar to your experience with your coach. Like we were talking about other things and it just kind of casually got mentioned. And I'm like, that could be a really big thing that's eating at you. And she was also wearing his socks because she was just had never gone out to get her own socks. It was just this little thing. I'm like, and she shifted it. It was her accountability for 1 week. I'm like, before we meet next, shoes and socks. And she's like, I can't believe how much that was a thing.
When you start identifying, I mean, and it's actually an exercise that I do with people with a worksheet and everything, because it's so important. When you start identifying the tolerations in your life, and then prioritizing them, right, and actually tackling them,
Yep,
and moving through them, and it can be something as simple as using the Marie Kondo method on a sock drawer. I mean, what once was a little mess, and then your life, I mean, it actually ramps up your life in the energy that you get from the positive energy that you get from that, which is both like removing the negative energy drain. And then you also get this sort of burst of joy. It can be a small joy if it's a sock drawer, or a bigger joy if it's something, a bigger challenge that you're resolving.
putting off. Yeah. Exactly.
And it's really up-leveling your life.
I know. It's these small shifts that can make big differences. And you're absolutely right that these things are being mirrored in other parts of our life, and there's metaphors. It's happening all over the place. But when you start to see it, the connections, the firing in your brain starts to wire it. And it's like, oh, okay. Maybe you can't do the big thing yet, but if you start doing these small things, you'll start getting confidence to then say, I got to address this. I got to this big thing. I got to do it.
Another huge area is just your health and fitness, right? And specifically, I'm thinking your diet, exercise habits, sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, and here's the big one that we talked about before: alcohol. Alcohol is such an energy drain, even if you don't drink a lot.
I had one glass the other night at a birthday celebration. One, and I was like, the next day, it messes your sleep. It messes,
Well, it's a depressant. And one of the things I've noticed is that, all the things that I spend, I have my mindset practices that I do most mornings, and, the effects that I achieve from that each day in my life are fantastic. Alcohol does the opposite.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's like literally you're doing all these things to tweak it, and it's like,
it's counterproductive. Now, I'm not like a complete teetotaler. I, definitely enjoy my wine, but I'm very careful with it because of that, and noticing, frequency, also amount, and then just relative to what I'm doing, right? Like if I'm in a challenge period, which I am right now, in other words, meaning, I've got a specific big project that I'm working on, then that's a good time to, really engage in what I call alcohol cessation, right? Where I'm really being careful about when and how much, I consume. And for anybody who isn't sure, I told you about this experience. I was considering working with a relationship coach who's really fantastic. And, we had a couple of phone calls, and she said, whether we end up working together or not, based on what, the conversations we've had, I think you might want to consider doing like a 90 days no alcohol period. And my initial reaction in my head was like, fuck that. I am not doing that. No way. And thankfully, I recognized that strong of a reaction was like, whoa,
what is that all about?
Right. What's that all about? And that is actually probably an indicator that I should consider doing this.
Right.
And
If it's a big deal, there's something reason why, what is the
absolutely, exactly. And so I did do it. And that was one of the best. I mean, that was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten from a coach, and I'm tremendously grateful to her for that. Because what I didn't realize until, and I did it, not only did I do it then, but 2 weeks after I finished that period, I started another one. And it was because it was so powerful, it was so transformative, that, well, and actually I also, well, it basically just was like clear to me that I did need to do another one. And I'm grateful that I made that decision then too, because it was at the end of the full 180 days. And even though there was like a 2 week period where I, drank plenty. And in fact, it was kind of exactly, it's like, woohoo, I get to drink wine again and whatever. Didn't really matter. The point is I didn't get back into the rhythm of drinking regularly. And so at the end of the 6 month period, I think that's the amount of time you really need for it to completely leave your system. It's not influencing you or affecting you at all. And if you're in doubt, do that. I highly recommend it because it changes the way you see alcohol. It changes your understanding of how much it impacts you.
And I think it
How
changes
much?
the relationship, like a little bit of, I always like to ask the question, what's my intention in having this glass? Because if the
That's a
intention
good
is
one.
I need to calm my mind, or the intention is I need it to calm my social like ability to be in a social setting, like,
Yeah.
what's your why behind even having that glass? Do you love, I don't love it so much that it's like, oh no, it's just like, I just enjoy that. I mean, some people do. Terrific. If that's it and that's your why, then savor it and enjoy it. But if your why, and get really honest with yourself, is to quiet that mind,
Mm-hmm.
that's not, that's numbing.
Yep. It is.
That's just taking it from
Numbing is,
here. It's going to come back louder.
yeah. You need
If
to
your
feel the
why,
feels.
if your why is because you have to have a hard conversation with someone you're nervous,
Yeah.
what can you, I mean, I've done these like silly experiments with myself of, okay, I think I would need alcohol to like have this. That for me is an indicator I need to have a sober conversation, because there's nothing worse. Talk about a hangover anyway. A vulnerability hangover after having alcohol is like tenfold, because you're like,
Absolutely.
why
Yeah.
did I? When you're in your present mind choosing to do something, you're like, okay, I consciously chose this.
Yeah. Well, here's a key one. And it takes me to my next answer in
Yeah.
terms of energy drains. Here's a key one. If you need alcohol to loosen up before you have sex with your partner,
Oh,
there's a problem. There's a problem.
that is an indicator. Why? Right? What's the
Yeah.
comfortable with it? Is it with yourself? Is it with your partner? Like,
Right.
what's
Well, and
the
here's the thing, energy drain, a huge energy drain, is being with the wrong person. If you're in an unhappy relationship. And sometimes, so yeah, sometimes, we talked about this earlier in the conversation. Sometimes the problems that you have with your partner aren't really with your partner.
right?
It's actually a result of the internal work that you need to do. But sometimes when you do that internal work and, get to a better place yourself, you realize actually there is an issue here. We have a values conflict or whatever it is that this doesn't work. And it is an energy drain to continue being in that relationship with that person. And if they aren't willing to change, especially if you're on a personal development journey,
Yep.
and you're making changes and transformations in your own life and they won't, and they are resistant, and, that's huge.
It's really
That's
hard to be on a personal growth journey, to be committed, to have this be one of your values, is to be like the best version of yourself. And then you are with someone who maybe you were with long ago before you realized how this was going to be so important to you. I believe any relationship can work if you have two willing parties that are like committed to
absolutely.
it. But the moment you don't and you're doing it, and I think this is why it's so important, if anyone that's listening is spinning in place, like, should I be in this relationship? Should I not? Your answer will come, like what you were saying, Kelly, when you do the work and you get clear on your values.
Yes.
And then it won't be, well, she said it, or this is what this person sees, or you will never have that resentment of like, I followed someone else's advice. It's going to feel so true to honoring yourself and not self-abandoning that it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be like, this is
Yeah.
my next step.
Well, here's a piece of advice I think I can give to people to help with that. So I was studying a book called Codependent No More.
Mm-hmm.
This was a few years ago, and I was in an unhappy marriage. And, I was studying that book partly to, help me get clear on, which things are my responsibility, which things are my partner's
Right.
responsibility, right? And kind of learning to not take responsibility for his stuff, but
Yep.
take 100% responsibility for my own stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really fantastic book. Melody Beattie, I think. Yeah, Codependent No More. Absolutely, highly recommend that book. And I reached a place in the book that I don't remember exactly how she put it, but I remember that it like instantly brought me to tears. It was such a relief to get this piece of advice, and it was, it's okay if you don't know yet,
Yes. Right.
and if you're not ready to make the decision,
It's okay. I
a
know.
decision, that's okay. It's okay. Just keep doing the work. It
Yep.
will become clear. So I have this sort of mental image in my mind of these shelves where I sort of put my beloved messes or
Yes.
questions or
Yes.
challenges. And I almost like do this visualization of wrapping it up in a pretty package or putting it in a pretty basket, with bows, ribbons, whatever, and putting it on that shelf. In other words, I'm not abandoning it. I'm not saying I won't deal with this. It's just saying I'm not quite ready. I know I need to do some more work. And what's really cool is a lot of times as I continue going forward and doing that work, I don't ever have to force that issue.
Right.
It kind of comes unraveled on its own as I work on, do my inner work. And unfortunately, in that relationship, the answer was I needed to move on.
Yeah.
I needed to move on. And it took a long time for me to get to the place of really being able to accept and understand that. But it was important to give myself that time.
Give yourself the grace and the time to do that, to know it. And similarly, like you have the bookshelf, I consider myself, I put it on the altar. And I had a coach that,
There
like
you
a
go.
mentor that said, I was trying to debate in my relationship, should I stay or should I go? And I was just so stuck in it. And she said, offer it to the altar. And I immediate relief, because she said
Yes.
either direction is going to be difficult and hard. And I just felt like the answers will come when the answers need to be there. And for
Yep.
me, like, surrendering it to a higher power of something was like, okay, you work on
Yep.
that. Like you go own that right there while I take care of here.
Yes. Yes. Well,
Um,
and one of the things I like to make clear to people is, you don't have to be religious or spiritual or, into woo to learn these tools, to use these tools to improve your life, etc. I'm not religious. I wasn't spiritual. I kind of did become more woo and embrace more of the woo, as I went forward in my personal development journey. But I've known people who are not at all, and yet they still, are able to get there. It's just you decide what works for you.
yeah. Why do we care if the end goal is peace or the end goal is freedom or the end goal is happiness? Do we really care how we get to those feelings? This is like,
No,
don't
no.
like woo. I'm like, before you judge it and you think, that doesn't work, like, does it matter? Like, I ask that question a lot because I'm like, this stuff may seem silly. Like, I'll tell women, like, put your head between your legs and just like giggle and wiggle for a bit. Like, if it makes you feel sillier and it makes you feel lighter and happier, and it's the dumbest thing, but it works.
Yeah.
Who cares, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have something I call a woo disclaimer that I do sometimes in my workshops that really seems to help people.
Yeah.
And it kind of is a modified version of some of what I was given. I feel like it was a gift from some of my own coaches in giving me alternative language to use, right? A lot of the fantastic resources that I've studied over the years, are very religious, have language that was problematic for me. But, I had one of my primary mindset, coach, mentor, what have you. His name is David Nagel. He had specific things that he would say, kind of a little bit going through with suggestions about alternative language, right? If this doesn't work for you, then consider
Right.
using that, da, 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 da. And so I kind of came up with my own little pep talk for, my mentees and clients and what have you, that's based on my own journey and how they can deal with resources like this and still get good value out of them.
Right, because
You
it's a shame
know,
if you're not if the word God triggers something so much in you, and it's a childhood thing that reminds you of guilt and shame, and it or whatever it's packaged in for you. And every time I'm like, just listen and listen to God, and that's all it brings you to. It's like, okay, replace that with, whatever that thing that
universe,
whatever,
spirit, energy.
whatever exactly. I'm
Someone, one of my coaches said at some point, cookies. I don't care.
there. And when we think about it, religion, they are all saying the same messages. Like all this other stuff, ego is coming into play with religion to say, mine's better than yours, and I'm judging you. But like the universal truths and messages are very similar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and another part that's I think important for people to be aware of, and I try to remind my own mentees and clients, is listen, if you're reading a book that was recommended to you by somebody you trust, who has been there, and this is a good resource. You can trust that this is a good resource. Look, and also it's resonating with you in other ways, right? If you get to a part that's hard, and my favorite example of this is a book called Letting Go by David Hawkins, which is a fantastic resource. It teaches a very, very good tool that I recommend a lot. But there's some stuff in there about faith healing. And that's really hard for people coming from an intellectual perspective who don't like woo. I don't think I'm even all the way there on some of that, and so all you have to do is go, look, when I get to something that I'm not sure about, suspend disbelief. Try doing that. Just suspend disbelief and say, okay, that's fine. Then I'm going to set aside my disbelief for now and just try going with it and see how it turns out.
Open.
If you can. Yeah, if you can. If you can't, like you're not on the fence about this. You're just like, no way. This is just not for me. That's fine too.
Yeah.
For that piece of it, don't throw out what's the expression? Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? So that piece of it, just set it aside and keep moving forward.
Exactly.
And take what you can use. And sometimes that ends up being to good effect. And I've had it happen where I circle back to that resource a year later, 2 years later, and study it again. And I no longer have any trouble with that. It may be because I actually believe it. It may not be. It may be that I have a different understanding of it now.
Yeah, exactly. Perspective has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So I very much am a believer, and this is what I coach on, the power of experimentation. Like one of my favorite books was Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment, where this guy just was like, I'm just going to keep trusting that when things get put, like the breadcrumb comes in my path, I'm just going to say yes to it. I'm going to surrender and move. And his life unfolded in the most ridiculous, absurd way that he never would have imagined. But he basically was like, viewed everything as just an experiment. And I like to say to people, hey, those beliefs that you have, think of those as your hypothesis. But then if you were a real scientist, and this helps people with the intellectual side, it's like, be the observer. Okay, I've got my hypothesis, this is what's going to be. And now I need to be objective in how I go about this and observe and watch and collect data.
I love that.
And if you start thinking every day you're just in the lab and every day you're the key scientist or observer of your life, everything becomes this very curious, enriching experience of like, oh, let's just try this on for size and see, but be open. The key is you have to be unattached. You can have your hypothesis, but you got to park it and then observe.
Yeah. The observer concept is such a powerful one in so many ways and areas. I mean, going back to our discussion about mindfulness, the observer role comes up there too. When you are being present, staying present, if you're meditating or just taking meditative practices into your day-to-day life, then part of what you're doing is recognizing, I am not my feelings.
Yes.
I am not my thoughts. And instead, I am, the observer of what's going on in my experience. And so when a thought comes up, I can notice it and let go of it and turn my attention to something else. Same thing with the feelings. And that's really powerful.
Cool that it made me think of it was when I would be with my ex and we talk about some of the, like the not fun topics that we have different perspectives and different views on. I would feel myself either over talking or over explaining myself. And so I did this experiment where I was like, okay, I'm just going to be the observer in these moments. And so he might say something, and the dialogue I would all of a sudden start training my brain to say and hear was, heart's beating fast right now. Ooh,
Mm.
tightening in the chest. And I would get like kind of silly and curious, like, wow, how is this happening? How is this possible? Someone's words are literally creating a physiological, and I would just be naming it in my head and watching my body move through these feelings and these emotions. And I found it fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And to not be so attached to it, like just to truly say, okay, how long is this beating going to last? Ooh, is it going to get, and I get excited. Like, is it going to get stronger? Is it going to get, ooh, if he says something else, am I going to get more like, let me check my hands right now. Are they in balls right now? Are they open?
Yeah.
And like, ooh, as he's talking, like, what if I just do this
Relax.
while he's talking?
Yeah.
Like, does this all of a sudden
Loosen
change
it up.
it?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. I call that being triggered.
yes.
And learning to notice when you're being triggered is like a huge step. It's one of the first steps in taking responsibility for your own feelings, where, recognizing, learning and understanding and recognizing that I don't have to react that way. When I notice myself feeling this, same thing, I can step back into observer mode, like you're saying, and watch this unfold and detach myself from that normal pattern and saying, hey, does that serve me? No, I can make a different choice. And I can just listen and absorb and not feel threatened by this.
Exactly. So many people the chain reaction is like thought reaction. And what I've experienced and read is you can slow down enough of your brain to say, thought, now I could have this feeling, but you can create the gap to have choice.
Mm-hmm.
Choice between thought to emotion. It's work. This is a practice. This takes consistency, yes. But it is game changing, because then you realize nobody has the permission to make you feel a certain way without your permission.
Yes, they don't have that power unless you give it to them, is how I say it. And that's absolutely right. And part of, I think, learning to take responsibility for your own feelings, not blame,
right,
but just responsibility, is about taking your power back, recognizing that I don't have to give other people the power to upset me, right, or anything else. And when I
do this, I'm aware of it, and I get to consciously choose, okay, do I just want to have a pity party? Do I just want to sink in it? And if you're consciously saying, yes, that's one thing. But if you're consciously saying, you know what? I got other things I really need to do right now, not for right now. I'll park it. I'll say, I need to process this back to you, like your bookshelf. I'm going to put it on the shelf.
I'm going to come back to this.
Mm-hmm. I don't have time for this right now. And that's part of these, time and energy tools that can help you really protect yourself, because I hear so many people get hijacked by the emotion. And I truly believe this is like the universe or some sort of level, like testing of you, right when you're like, okay, I finally have the day, I'm going to do that big project. And then something out of the nowhere comes and it triggers you. It's like, to me, it's a little bit of, how serious are you about that thing? Are you going to let what this happened, and is this important? It needs to be dealt with now. Or are you letting the drama of it in the moment be your excuse?
Mm-hmm.
Guess I can't do it. I guess it's going to have to wait.
Right.
The excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning to stay on track when things like that come up is huge. Like, absolutely huge.
If there's someone that a friend or a family member, that when you take the calls, it's usually something that's going to cause heaviness or blah, blah, blah. Like, first check your energy. How does this person interact with your energy? Mm-hmm. And they call you 10 minutes before you're about to get on a call for work or something important. You get to choose if you pick up or not.
Yeah. Well, and actually, one of the things that I strongly recommend, that I do myself, is before anything, like, especially if it's a call, like a check-in call, I call them with a client, mm-hmm. Or something like this, I'm about to get on, do a presentation or what have you. I block off some time before as well, where this is a period where I'm going to prep, and I may not actually need to do anything to prep, but part of the prep is I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not checking Facebook. I'm not, and it's usually at least 5 minutes, but ideally more like 15 minutes. Yeah. To create that clear space. And I'm kind of setting my intentions for how I intend to show up. Right. In
Yes.
other words, how, my way of being for this call, for this
Yes.
presentation, what have you. And usually for me, it's actually saying, right, so I need to let go of and put aside somewhere for right now the worries, the fears, the doubts, whatever it is, and focus on this person that I'm showing up with, right? And how can I make the biggest difference,
Yeah.
right? Amy, our coach and our mastermind group, she says that, and I love it. I've kind of taken that for my own. And I don't remember what I was saying before I took that. But basically, that's the idea that I'm saying, okay, I'm not going to allow myself to get distracted by the other things that are going on in my life because this is important to me.
Yeah.
This person is important to me. This experience is important to me. And honestly, it doesn't have to be something like that. It could be a massage.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I do that when I get my kids back. I'm like, what space do I need so I'm in a really good headspace before that happens? Because if I see something or something else is in my zone with me, it's going to impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really coming back to being intentional with your choices and what you're allowing in and what you're allowing out.
Also, that's the place where I strongly recommend that book that I mentioned, Letting Go by David Hawkins, because he teaches a simple process that I was doing something similar before I studied that book the first time. But it really brought it down to a nice, simple process for dealing with when something does come up, whether it's a negative feeling or experience or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I recommend reading the book, but the process itself is simple. And it's basically just like, okay, you notice you're feeling a negative feeling. Maybe I'm frustrated with, I just got off the phone with my, soon to be ex-husband, and I'm frustrated by something he said, or, oh my God, I can't believe, whatever it is. Right. And I need to get on with my day. I need to, get back to my tasks, or maybe I have a client call coming up. Or even if I'm just living my life and I don't want to feel this way. Well, the first thing is, like, it's natural to feel this way, right?
Permission, that accepting.
Exactly. It's part of being human. If I can name it, then I do. It's natural to feel frustrated. Or sometimes you don't have a name for the feeling. It's natural to feel this way, right? It's part of being human. And so it's okay, but it is just a feeling.
Yeah.
It does not have to control me. It does not have to dictate how where I go from here. And actually, it's okay for it to be here, but it also doesn't have to take over my experience, and it doesn't have to occupy my attention. Right now, I need to focus on whatever else it is, or I want to, or I choose to focus on this other thing.
Really feel like mentally and emotionally strong beings.
Yes.
Because that feels very powerful to make that decision for yourself to choose which one you're going to go with. And
Absolutely.
Each circumstance is different. And you get to every time. This is where the work is just continues to breathe. It's every day.
Yeah.
What do we want?
Well, what's cool about it is this, and all the other practices that you and I are talking about, is that you get stronger and better, and it gets faster, and you have to think about it less. And, it's almost like you develop superpowers.
Yes.
In a lot of situations.
People, anything,
yeah.
If you do it over and over and over, you'll get better, you'll get better, you'll get better. When you look at someone where they're at and you want that, they didn't wake up that way.
No. Yeah. It started out hard.
And it's hard, and expect it to be hard, and expect it to be uncomfortable, and expect it to be, you want to say, why bother? Expect that. So when those emotions come up, you're like, okay, this is part of my growth and my process.
Yep.
Oh, a landline call coming in. Hold on. Kelly, will you share with everyone this one simple, like, when things get really complicated? And you share this with me, like, when everything is just like, oh my gosh, it's just, where do I begin? And it comes on, and they're like, and then this and that. And what do you do with them?
Yeah, it's when things feel really hard, when things feel really chaotic, when I feel like it's, I have to push things uphill in my work or anything else. It's just, you stop and you think, ask yourself, how can I make this simple and fun? Or how can I make this easy and fun? Whichever of those resonates with you the most. For me these days, it's simple and fun. It started with easy and fun. Or what would this look like if it were simple and fun?
Yeah.
And so I owe that again to a coach that I worked with previously, who gave me that when I was in overwhelm and, you know, um, and I just started asking that anytime I started noticing that feeling, ask myself that question. And the thing is, your subconscious mind in there is programmed to respond, is programmed
Right.
to actually answer your questions. You can give it directives, you can ask it questions, and it will sit there, work on it without you even realizing it. And it just that one simple practice over the course of a 12-month period allowed me to change my job. At the time I was the law firm administrator for my law firm. And there were things that were just brutal. I hated doing, so a lot of my week was caught up in these things. And over that 12-month period, by just doing that, I started coming up with ideas, simple things that I could do or change or delegate. And I mean, it started flowing and becoming simple and fun.
It's great. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
kind of like, the movie Inside Out that they have, the dream, I think it's DreamWorks, but it's, anger, each emotion has their personality. I like to think of it as like, okay, how would, like, similar idea, what would simple do right now? And then I'm like, okay, what would complicated do? And you can start trying on these, like, what would fun do?
Yeah.
Just even take a minute and jot the first thing that comes to mind. Simple would just, whatever it is, place a
Mm-hmm.
phone call, get up right now and go for a walk. Complicated
Mm-hmm.
would try to figure out all the steps. Complicated would try to get from A to Z with everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I love that you said jot just now because that makes me think of another powerful practice that I love, which is journaling. A lot of times, so just simply writing it out. And there's a lot of different things you can journal. In this case, we're talking about working something out that is in your mind. And it is interesting how often putting it on paper is a game changer.
Yeah, because
And allows me to it becomes more clear. Other things are like gratitudes. You can do that in your mind, thinking about things, choosing to focus on things that you're grateful for can be a really powerful mindset tool that takes you from a negative space into a positive space. But I find that journaling them, like I do, this is part of my daily practices. 3 gratitudes, in other words, things that I'm grateful for that are outside of myself.
Yeah.
And then 3 things that I appreciate about myself. Just every single day. And if I need to do deeper work, like I'm really struggling today, today's a dark day, I might extend that, especially the gratitudes, and just fill, 2-3 pages with everything I can think of right at this moment that I'm grateful for. But journaling, yep.
Tools are so simple, but they're easy. Yeah, I mean, it's something that similar. I mean, I have these 7 daily practices, and journaling's number 2. It's like it's got to be part of the daily routine. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, these are some people call them spiritual practice. I call it a mindset practice. It's another tool, really, that is important. It helps create a container for doing some of the work that we need to do. It also helps bring in clarity and focus and peace of mind that you get to take with you into your day every day.
Yes. Oh, this has been so fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I just love, all these tools, tips, and tricks. And I love what you're doing, Kiele. I love that, how you support people, the way you look at life with mindset. And I love the blend. Your blend between the intellect and these practices that can be seen as more spiritual, but makes a really safe entry point for people that are like hesitant and unsure. I think you make it very much tangible and like able to accept and digest.
Thank you.
I
I
know you have
appreciate
an
that feedback.
upcoming, you're amazing. I mean, I remember when I first met you, that was something that stood out. Was actually it was on our mastermind calls, but you just had this very like more chill. I didn't know you were an attorney. This chill vibe going on.
Consider that a compliment.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I love that she's got this other whole world, and blending the two is unique because actually I'm finding that a lot of them kind of are sitting still very separate, and they're not.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges for sure. I think for this group, and it's one of the reasons that they're so dear to me.
Yes.
Right? Is there are some major obstacles for so many of them in
we're not taught this stuff in school. These mindful practices, it's getting better. But if you're a high achieving woman and you've been on a track your whole life, your track does not usually include, you know, coaching and becoming aware of your feelings and your needs. You anything you get kind of learn to like block that and suppress it
Yeah.
and play the
Yeah.
play by the playbook that we've all been conditioned to.
Yep. So all the things that I've never put it this way or thought about it this way before, this just came up for me, that all the things that we learn to do to become the successful women that we are also hide the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. It's so tricky. So will you
So it's
share
all
with
about
everyone
learning. Sorry, go ahead.
your retreat? Because you have a retreat coming up, and I want
Yes,
to
I
talk
am
about
so excited. Yeah, about the retreat. This is something that it was like this epiphany that I had back in May, actually, of last year, that I'm finally pulling the trigger on. It
it.
is a mindset mentoring retreat for attorney moms and other high achievers, who suffer from guilt, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, and are ready to overcome all that, and they want to turbocharge their transformation. I have it's super small, and I'm actually about to go into outreach mode on Monday. 5 women, only 5 women,
Okay.
and because I want it to be really intimate, a really special, exactly, really special experience. We're going to be going to Palmea, the House of Aya, which is a just fantastic 5-star wellness resort in Playa del Carmen. And yeah, it's a 2-day experience, but with travel, like a 4-day thing, kind of travel on a Friday, Saturday, Sundays when we do our thing, and return on Monday.
Or longer
And
if you want to stay.
I know, exactly. Yeah. My travel consultant, I'm telling people, like, look, you can definitely extend or come early. My travel consultant will help you with all that. But, we're going to have 2 solid days to enjoy this beautiful resort, but more importantly, learn the, basics, like the building blocks of mindset mastery, and actually, build their toolbox that they get to take home with them, so that they can not only begin experiencing the peace and the beauty of this, amazing resort, but actually also extend that where they're creating lasting peace of mind, so that they can really get to a place of living their best life now, right? Really enjoying their life now while they build the life of their dreams. And a lot of in the case of a lot of my mentees and clients, they're already working on building their best life.
Oh, did she freeze? Did I freeze? I'm not sure if anyone can tell me if she's frozen, because I still think I'm moving here. Um, well, you know what she's talking about with retreats, like for me, I went on a retreat a couple of years ago and it was game changing. It's like that time and space to leave everything else behind and just for a moment, for a few days, focus on yourself and get really clear on
I'm back. We did so well for so long, and then it tanked. I have no idea what happened.
I know. Oh, I was just sharing like how retreat has impacted me and how like it can make such a difference, because all that other day-to-day life, which is hard when you're trying to do the work and it's kind of causing static, it is really nice to step away, get a full clean perspective, be fully dropped in, and then you've got now like a taste of like, oh my gosh, okay. You start to really see where you've just accepted and tolerated a lot of things in your life. I think that's the key. And then when you go back, it's like, okay, now having that support and mentorship to keep me sustaining and practicing these tools. But it's
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
beautiful way for
Yeah.
a reset. Like I think a retreat is an amazing way to, in 2 days of time, maybe 4 days of travel, have game-changing shifts happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. For travel in general helps me. It kind of opens up my mind. And then, when I've had opportunities to do, these workshops or retreats, where I actually go somewhere else and spend time with, the support of my coach, his or her team, it makes such a big difference. And that was part of what I was kind of trying to get to, like, how can I really make the biggest difference for my new clients, people who are just getting started. So super excited. I can't
So
wait.
amazing. Okay, so if you're interested, Kiele, I'll send out also a replay. I'll add it into the notes, and you can contact her directly or send me something, and I will be happy to forward it along. So
Absolutely. Well, and anybody who wants to connect with me directly can just reach out on LinkedIn. My profile is my first name, which is Kiele.
yay! Awesome. All right. Well, this was so fun. We'll have to do it again. And
I
she said,
agree. And unfortunately, we're getting bogged down again. This is
I
so
know it's
unfortunate.
time. It's time. All right, Kiele, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here with me. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Sending you so much love and light, and we'll talk soon.
I'm back. So
Yay.
I think next time I'm going to have to plug into the actual wired Ethernet connection. That may be the tweak or the adjustment here. And this is a teaching moment. These things happen.
This is why it's so great. It happened here for a reason.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Lauren, so much for inviting me. This was fantastic. I love what you're doing. I love the energy that you bring to everything, to our conversations, to our mastermind, I'm sure to your clients. And I can't wait to continue getting to know you.
Same here. Same here. Thank you so much. All right. We'll talk soon, Kiele and everyone else. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.